Hello friends, Bigstupidgrin here, welcoming you to a brand new series on the channel. When I'm not playing Oxygen Not Included and other games, my wife and I play a whole lot of Arkham Horror card game. So I figured that I wanted to share that onto this hobby of making Let's Plays videos. So that's what we're going to do. So in this video, I'm going to run down our investigator choice, the character and lore, her in-game strengths and weaknesses with completely arbitrary grades because I think that's funny. It's kind of like ranking stuff. It's fun to talk about. Just don't take it seriously at all. And the explanation of my beginning deck for the Dunwich campaign, and reading of the campaign prologue lore, the story. What's not in this video is gameplay, so if you just want to skip to the playthrough, this is not the video for you. You can check out a link of the deck that I use, and you can wait for that video. So anyway, if you are still here, awesome. Let's move on. Jenny Barnes, the dilettante. Jenny Barnes never guessed that she would be returning to America so soon, or under such circumstances. Arkham, Massachusetts is a far cry from Paris, but when her sister's regular correspondence became increasingly deranged, before stopping entirely, Jenny could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to her. As Jenny begins to search for her sister, she quickly realizes that Isabel is not the only girl in Arkham to have gone missing. How might the disturbances be connected? And why do the flyers for the local harvest festival depict the face on the medallion Jenny sent her sister? So, Jenny is of the rogue class. They are the class of tricks, of huge plays, of limitations in their card pool, but we'll talk all about that later. Let's talk about her stats. She has 3s across the board: 3 willpower, 3 investigate, 3 fight, and 3 agility or evade. You'll hear those stats being called different things. She has 8 hit points, as you can see by that heart symbol, and she has a 7 for her horror health pool. And she's deck size of 30. She has rogue cards level 0 to 5, neutral cards level 0 to 5, and up to 5 level 0 cards from other classes. And then, of course, you can include her signature cards, or you have to. Jenny's Twin 45, searching for Izzy in 1 basic random weakness. And that's her other lore as well. I read it off of the novella cards. If you want to look at that, that's pretty much the same story. Basically, she's been in pursuit of comforts, fine dining, latest fashions, but now her MacGuffin, as in the form of her sister, she's ready to kick butt and take names and all that good stuff. So, as I said up here, her stats are very balanced for better or worse. Those 3s definitely do not indicate weaknesses, but it's hard for her to do anything naturally or fairly without card help. You can investigate something at a 1. You can punch a rat if you need to. If you played this game, you know all about rats. So it's okay. Moving on. Her ability, though, is definitely an A. You collect an additional resource during each upkeep phase. This really pushes Jenny Barnes' deck and her playstyle. Some abilities don't always push you in a certain way or another. It's just a nice add-on. But Jenny Barnes has one of the best abilities in the game. Now, she's not the reigning king or queen of resource collection now with the addition of Preston, but Preston has so many issues that she's number 1 in my heart, at least. Her Elder Sign, which is that star symbol there, that's one of the tokens you can get by, and she gets +1 for every resource you have. It's very thematically appropriate, but not very impactful in the game. Usually you don't take a test at a negative number, so that +1 for each resource you have is probably never going to pass a test for you. There are win by X cards, especially in the rogue pool, I think only in the rogue pool maybe, that could benefit from drawing that Elder Sign. Otherwise, treat it like a +0. Not bad. Let's move on. Her card pool is her really big weakness at the beginning. Rogue cards, level 0. There's some great cards, but as far as just fighting things and grabbing clues, which are kind of the main two linchpins of the game, they are not the best at it, to say the least. They do have some great cards, but not the best. But as soon as you get to spend XP, that all changes. They can have some fantastic abilities to both investigate and decent amount of fighting too, as well as evasion and all the good stuff. She does get helped by, since she is a Dunwich investigator, you get up to 5 level 0 cards from other classes, and I suggest that those are really shore up her weaknesses in the Rogue 0 XP card pool. So here are the signature cards you get with her from the Dunwich set. So when you buy the core box for the Dunwich campaign, she comes with these two. You get the Twin 45s as her signature item, her signature good card, Searching for Izzy as her signature weakness. Let's go over the Twin 45. So it's costs X. It's one of the few cards that cost X, and you get X ammo for them, and then you can spend an ammo to fight, +2 fight, and +1 damage. So it's a decent weapon for killing kind of smaller to mid-range monsters. It's not like a flashy, huge Guardian card, but the X ammo is really, really good because you can, just pile in how many you need at the moment. Two hands is a bit of a weakness. You have to put away your flashlights and derringers if you want to get this out, unless you really want to lean into the two-handed lifestyle and grab like a bandolier or something. And of course the icons that you could discard if you wanted to commit this to a test are pretty good. Really good for a backstab with the possibility of 3 evasion symbols. Let's take a look at her signature weakness now, Searching for Izzy. Now, once you draw that, you have to attach to the location furthest from you. You have to spend 2 actions. Each arrow in there represents an action, and you get 3 actions per turn. You have to investigate, and instead of discovering clues, you discard the Searching for Izzy. If you end the game with it out, you take a mental trauma. It is not, really the worst weakness in the world to have. It can be annoying to draw this at the end of a campaign when you really don't have time to work on it. The cool part is in multiplayer, since this card is actually, you can interact with it, other people. So if you have like a dedicated investigator or just someone in the right spot in the right time, they could deal with this for you. And 1 mental trauma isn't the worst thing in the world unless you continuously, collect mental traumas. She starts with 7 horror health pool, or sanity pool, I guess. So it's not anything crippling. So I give her cards a B. Basically, the weakness isn't too bad. The card is pretty good, but not like fantastic. And if you buy her novella, which is what I read the lore from, you have an option to run 2 other signature cards, either with the cards from the core set or the Dunwich set, or instead of, in replacement. You got a Green Man Medallion, which is just greedy as all heck. You can spend resources and make things cheaper to buy. And Sacrificial Beast, though, is a pretty big negative for trying to do this, because until you kill that beast, you cannot gain resources from card effects, and her ability is a card effect. So you're only going to gain 1 resource a turn. Your Lone Wolf is turned off. Dr. Milan is turned off if you're running him. You can still spend actions to grab resources, but it's really annoying. And he's, at least at the beginning of a campaign, he's pretty hard to take out. 3-man medallion, I've tested it once in a multiplayer game with a dedicated fighter, and it's going pretty well. Although the later on you go in a campaign, the less you're kind of able to use it. So it's really good in the early parts of a campaign to really set off your XP spending. And then at the end, you can, at least ditch it for 2 wild icons. So, in summary, she's awesome when she gets to use that resource advantage. And she is not like other rogues with low willpower or in the Forgotten Age, tests your agility a lot. Hope that's not spoiling anything. She doesn't get totally destroyed by the encounter deck. However, it is kind of hard to do fair skill checks, like investigating on your own, fighting on your own, evading on your own without card help. There's the whole generalist versus specialist thing, although you can definitely spec her to be, especially as an investigator specialist. And she can do fighting as well. But again, you kind of, like most rogues, you have to get off the ground as far as XP goes. Then they get a whole lot better. So let me introduce the deck that I'm going to use. We're using, well, let's go ahead and go over it. We're including rogue staples. Lone Wolf might be one of the best cards in the game until maybe you get to 3 or 4 investigators. 2 investigators, you often use Lone Wolf. Obviously solo, there is no drawback. Just awesome card. Derringer is their weapon of choice. They have some terrible weapons along with that, but the Derringer is really the best of the rogue weapons at 0 XP. It's okay. You get to fight at a 5, and if you get lucky, you can succeed by 2 or more and do 2 damage, so it could be worse. Backstab, of course, the rogue staple in almost any RPG. You get to do 3 damage if it hits, and uses agility. Now, Jenny doesn't have high natural agility. She has a 3, which is fine, but not like awesome for backstab, but you can use other skill pumping cards to amp that up. Then Leo DeLuca has one of the strongest ally effects in the game, especially for 0 XP, but you have to pay for it. 6 cost is, I think, the highest cost in the game so far, except unless you count the X cost cards. There is nothing more expensive than a Leo DeLuca, at least at the onset. Our off-class choices, we've got Dr. Milan Christopher. So he helps us with one of the most important things, investigating. And when we investigate, we get an extra resource. So he really, on top of just being one of the best cards in the game anyway, he really helps us with what we're trying to do. Get resources and then spend resources. Hyper-awareness, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but it is something that lets you pump up your investigate and agility. It's nice. And then Dynamite Blast, which is pretty important. It's really good with Jenny because she has the resources available to play it. It's damage that you can do without needing to look at the Chaos Bag, which is really important. Test list anything needs to be considered. Now, Dynamite Blast is really expensive for most investigators, but for Jenny, it is very reasonable. And of course, spend those resources. We've got Hyper Awareness and Hard Knocks. Now, these do overlap a little bit, so there's a little bit of negative synergy there. But I do think it's important in a 0 XP build to get those out and to get being able to leverage our resources to our advantage, which is really the crux of Jenny throughout the campaign with any amount of experience. And then Hyper Awareness, again, this is going to be a very temporary card for us. One of the first, probably the first XP card you get as Jenny is probably going to be Streetwise. This is like Hyper Awareness, only because it's permanent, it starts in play. You don't have to draw it. And you get to spend 2 resources to get +3 instead of 1 for 1. So it's a little less flexible than Hyper Awareness, I suppose, but it's going to give you better stats for the spend, and you don't have to draw it, which is really, really important. So why can I stick cards that I'm going to get rid of immediately? Well, that's another one of the best cards in the game. I really think is a top, I don't know, 3 or 4 card in the game. I think it's probably the most underrated card, unless you're a rogue player, is adaptable. It's permanent, so it just edits it changes the way you edit your deck. You can swap level 0 cards out for other level 0 cards. So as you buy cards, or you want to go into a scenario that requires something different, you can swap some things out. Hyper Awareness will be one of the first cards to go. We can get another Dr. Milan. We could get, I don't know, Fire Axe if we wanted to. Use one of those off-class slots. But the main thing is getting rid of some of those temporary cards that aren't as good, or just changing with the style of our deck. And then I'm going to talk about the situational choices. Elusive, of course, is a rogue staple, but I decided to put it in here for whatever reason. It's fast, it doesn't take an action, it's relatively cheap, and you get to basically teleport to a revealed location with no enemies. Gets you out of a jam, as you can probably see there with the picture. Really, really powerful. Fine Clothes. It's okay. Well, actually, it's pretty bad as a damage horror soak, but what it's there for is to reduce difficulty of parlay actions, which is pretty good. So we're running 2 of those. Again, we can adapt all those away when we don't need to parlay anymore. And then I'm Out of Here is, well, pretty self-explanatory. You get to get the hell out of there. A lot of scenarios just want you to resign. And not dying is really, really important. Sometimes that ends a campaign right away. Sometimes it just causes bad things and snowballs your campaign in a bad direction. It also has 2 agility icons, which is nice, given that it's really, really situational. And we only run 1 of those, of course. And that's the deck. Let me go back here and show the deck a little bit more. It's a pretty standard fare. It is tweaked towards clue gathering, but it can do a little bit of fighting. I do have a decent amount of skill cards in there, just because we need to pump up those 3s up to something a little more easy to win. Yeah, that's about it. Emergency Cache and Flashlight are pretty standard fare for almost every single deck. So don't need to really talk about that. If you want to look those up on ArkhamDB, they just help you investigate and give you resources. Anyways, let's go ahead and go on the Prologue, which I forgot to change the font to bold white, so, you know, professional job here. Anyway, let's dive in. Dr. Henry Armitage pours himself a glass of Pinot and sits down at his desk, gesturing for you to sit across from him. I apologize for the short notice, he begins. His face is pale, his forehead sweaty and wrinkled with worry. Armitage, the head librarian of Miskatonic University, and a former mentor of yours, privately contacted you in the hopes of gaining your assistance. Eager to help, you've made your way to his home in Southside. Upon entering, you were surprised to find his home in disarray. Books and notes litter his desk, and an empty bottle of wine has tipped over onto the ground by the fireplace. You've always known Armitage to be neat and well organized. The elderly man takes a moment to collect his thoughts. I'm looking for 2 of my colleagues, Dr. Francis Morgan, Professor of Archaeology, and Warren Rice, Professor of Languages. Warren was supposed to meet up with me over supper earlier today to discuss several important findings, but he has since gone missing. At first I thought nothing of it, but I have a nagging feeling something else is going on, a very familiar feeling. You've never seen Armitage quite this worried before. His hands tremble as he reaches for the glass on his desk, and he sips from it nervously. I tried to find Francis, hoping he knew where Warren was, but he too is out of touch. Francis has been spending a lot of time in the gambling den, or so I'm told. I'm sent for you because I'm worried Warren might be in trouble. I would appreciate it greatly if you could find him for me. You may also wish to ask Francis for help, if you can reach him. So in this campaign, we are allowed to make a choice at the very beginning. Professor Warren Rice was last seen working late at night at the Humanities Department at Miskatonic University. You can choose to search for him there. Or, Dr. Francis Morgan was last seen gambling at the Clover Club, an upscale speakeasy and gambling joint located downtown. Let's go talk to him. Those two choices decide which scenario you want to start. And for this playthrough, we are going to opt for the scenario 1A, extracurricular activity. We are going to look for Professor Warren Rice in the Miskatonic University. Now, being that this is Arkham Horror, of course, with Armitage and Miskatonic University, this does follow the Dunwich tale from H.P. Lovecraft. And if you didn't know, all of his stuff is for free on Kindle. So I strongly suggest, if you haven't read about Dunwich, I think it's called the Dunwich Horror, or the Dunwich Horror, sorry. They kind of use those two pronunciations interchangeably. I would suggest go ahead and download that and give it a read. It's actually pretty good. Depends if you like Lovecraftian horror or not. But anyway, that's the end of this prologue video. The next video, which will come out immediately with this, is our playthrough of extracurricular activity. So, hope to see you there. Until then, have a good one.